All right. Okay, so this thing's recording now. So today's session is the TerraSync field session, and I'll have my GPS on, except it doesn't seem to be tracking right now. I'll have it on so we can all see it outside, as pretending we are outside collecting data. Today we're doing best field collection practices and kind of going over the data. I will recap kind of what we did Monday at the end of the session, where I kind of went over TerraSync. I think I'm going to start again with this just to have a TerraSync session. We'll go over the menus one more time. We will go over basic data collection, and then at the end we will do some data processing. So what I will do is get my GPS up on the screen here, and I'm just going to exit out. So on my device, TerraSync shows up on the main screen. I think the field crew in Florida actually has a Geo. If it's a Geo 7.
Sorry.
Oh.
I can't like see your screen. Are we supposed to?
Yeah. Yeah, let me fix that. All right. That is a good point there.
We go.
Thank you, Emma. Okay. So just to kind of recap that, this is what we're going to cover today, the field software overview, just the menus. We're going to go over collecting points, lines, and polygons, how to collect the photo as well, and then some, Emma, just curious, do y'all have, if it's a Geo 7, do y'all actually have a laser on that device? I don't know.
I think it does have a laser, but we've like never used it.
Okay, well, I'll definitely show how to do the offset. That shouldn't be a problem. Okay, so now that my screen is working, on my Geo 7, the TerraSync shows up on the main screen. But if you don't have that device with that operating system, you can hit the start menu, and TerraSync is usually at the bottom of the screen. One thing I'll point out here is if you don't like scrolling down every time, you can actually move this icon by tapping and holding on the TerraSync icon, and you can drag it to the top. Now this would be for those Nomads or Junos or non-Geo 7 devices. But if you have a Geo 7, it's on the main screen, like I have here. Sorry, it's starting up TerraFlex. This is the software that we'll talk to y'all about later on in the year. Let's see if I can get rid of that for you. Later on with the new stuff that's going to come out. All right, so TerraSync. Now mine starts with this. Sorry, let me exit out of this. My TerraSync starts with 3 versions. It's because it's a demo license. You all probably run the professional edition. Whatever license you have, it'll automatically start without this screen. This is just because I have a demo. It always starts on the status in the SkyPlot screen. And you might have heard a chime on my speaker there. If you did, that's just showing that, indicating that the GPS did connect right here. That's this little, I think it looks kind of like a Star Wars TIE fighter icon. Anyway, that's the GPS icon. If I click on it, it's basically telling me right now there's not enough satellites. The 0 indicates how many satellites I'm tracking. The top bar right here is my battery icon. I charged it up earlier today. For those of y'all that run the Geo 7s, 2 hours on a charger gets about 60%, and then 4 hours, I think is more than that. 2 hours gets you about 80%, and 4 hours gets you 100% on those batteries. The next icon here is our estimated accuracy. We'll go over this more once the data file is opened. You'll see on the screen here in the middle of the SkyPlot, I have my different satellites. So anything in a black solid box is a US GPS satellite. Anything in a red is a Russian. And anything that's in like red, but it's just the outline, it means we're tracking it. So like satellite 10 right here, satellite number 12, we're tracking them, but we're not using it in our position. And you'll start to see more satellites pop in on the screen here once it kind of settles in. My antenna is right outside of a 2-story house, so it may not track a whole bunch. It's under an awning, so we'll see what happens. Below that, you'll see my position. In this case, it's in state plane. I'm not sure what state plane is. I think we set it up for Florida earlier on Monday. And then I have my settings that my GPS are in. These are preset, and I'll show that in a minute. So there is basically the status skyplot screen. When you go to collect data, you need at least 4 satellites to start working. In this case, my screen now says 6. If I click on it, it'll say 5 GPS, 1 GLONASS. That's indicated here on the same map with 5 in the solid black and number 17 there in the red. All right. Under status, we have other menus here. Satellite info. Honestly, I never go in here, but you can just, if you're interested to see where the satellite is on the horizon, which one it is, that's what these are. Honestly, I don't ever use that. Receiver is a pretty good one to go into. It just lets you know what GPS you're connected to. In this case, mine is a Geo7X centimeter. It tells me a little bit about the firmware version and some other indicators of the firmware. Below receiver, if I click on this sub menu here, I'm going to go to real time. Now, I don't have a real time set up, so there's nothing here for it to display. We'll set up a SBAS or maybe my LSU real time in a minute so you can see how that works. Sensor, this would just be if we had the laser hooked up, it would just tell us a little bit of information about the sensor. Honestly, the only one I ever really use in here is the skyplot, and I use this about. So if someone calls in and say they're having problems, the first thing I check is the version that we're running. The Geo7X, the most stable version right now, most stable for this device is 5.86. And it gives you my install code, when it expires, and stuff like that. If you ever have a problem with the GPS, I may ask for a system report if you call in. So under the status about screen, there's a system report. And if I click on it, it'll generate a report that gets stored on the device. It just has all kinds of information. And then I send that over to Trimble. This software is really stable, so we don't have too much problems with it. But every once in a while, we may have you go and send that. So I'll just go back to the skyplot screen. Now you see my GPS kind of kicked in a little bit. I reset it the other day, so I maybe didn't have enough time. Last week I had mentioned if the GPS sits on a shelf for a few weeks or a month or longer, it's best to, sorry, let's shut my email off here. It's best to reset the receiver and let it sit outside for about 15 minutes to get a new almanac. When you turn your device on, the almanac kind of helps get your position quicker. So when you first turn it on, it starts looking and says, okay, I see satellite 12 is here on the west. Satellite number 25 is in the southern hemisphere, and 17 is in the northern. So if it knows where to look, it can get your position faster. If it's an old almanac, it's looking for satellites that aren't in that spot anymore, and you get weird, slow, your accuracy may not be good. So to fix that, you just click on status, you go to setup, and right under the menu setup, we have options, reset receiver. So that's the first thing I always recommend that you do if it hadn't been used in a while or if it's acting a little slow. Under the setup menu, this is what we went over last week or last Monday. Logging settings pretty much is where we spent most of our time. We set up our estimated accuracy here. So I want my accuracy displayed. That'll be above this little icon over here, these 2 arrows in the horizontal line. That means horizontal accuracy, just to show you if I change this to vertical, those lines, once I hit done, will start going up and down. I think for what y'all are working with, horizontal is going to be that main setting. Base distance just depends on where you're working. For you all, since y'all are there in the Panhandle, there's a station in Pensacola. There's a station in, I think it's right north of, I'll check here on the internet here. I had a station pretty close to you, I think. Anyway, 50 miles is pretty good there. Let's just go look. Let's see. So this is a map of all the stations in Florida. I can't remember, that park was probably somewhere around in here. I think that's kind of where y'all work, between 20, or no, y'all are on that 30, exit 30A, that must be right around in here. Anyway, you have a station over here in Panama. So we would, once we figure out how close that station is, we can adjust our settings. We have one in Destin, and there's one up here in Crestview. This one in Defuniak has been inactive. But anyway, there's a handful of stations around. Should be good. Georgia, that's not going to show up on this map, but Georgia has a little bit different. And then I'm not sure if y'all do work in Asheville or North Carolina at all. There's definitely stations up there as well. So this distance can change based on how close that base is to you. I'm going to hit done on that. We really didn't change anything else in here. We set the antenna height up. Not much else we have to change. We'll go over real-time settings later. The GNSS settings, the Geo is always COM3. The Nomad, I think, is the COM2. On the Geo, we use the smart settings.
So if we like don't have an antenna, which I don't think we ever use, if we do, can we just like turn that off?
Yeah, so, well, yeah, you meant under antenna settings over here? Is this the one?
Yeah, I mean, when we turn it on, it always like says antenna height for like 4 feet, but we don't even have like, I mean, is the antenna like an attachment, I guess?
Oh, so on the Geo 7, the antenna is, give me 1 second. Let me explain that. Let's see.
I mean, is it like built in? It's not like
it is.
Yeah, old school antenna.
Yeah.
So how do we know like what to set it to in terms of like the feet?
Yeah. So if you're not worried about height, if you're just holding it in your hand, 4 foot's probably good. You know, just kind of guess. You know, you're not going to have it 2 foot on it. It's not really. It's more important for customers trying to get high accuracy vertical measurements. Like they want to know the elevation of this drain pipe, so that the next manhole that they go to, they want to know if it's flowing uphill or not flowing uphill. if that is going uphill or downhill. So they're just wanting to know elevation. So in your case, it's not as important. Let me bring up this webinar I did here. And this is something too, like on the next Wednesday session, if we need to spend a little time on the on y'all's hardware, we can definitely do that as well. So I'm going to go over to this page right here. So this is, are you seeing my screen with the Trimble Geo 7 on the PowerPoint? Okay. So I'm just going to go through here just quick on the Geo 7. Slot number 1 is if you had an antenna. I have a cable right now plugged in here. It goes to an external antenna that's sitting on my roof. The start screen, that's the main screen here. SIM card slots on the left side of the device. I wouldn't even worry about that these days. Application keys, basically that middle button, that's what turns on the laser, and that's what actually turns on the camera to do photos. So when I take photos here in a minute in TerraSync, that's the button I'm going to be hitting, this center button. Microphone, don't really use that. The power button is an important one that lets you turn on and off, lets you do screen calibrations, things like that. But this is what I wanted to get to right here. That's where your antenna is, where it says that big old Trimble. Basically anything above that black screen or the plastic, that whole piece on the top is an antenna. And if you actually hold the Geo on the side, you'll see that antenna kind of, the device kind of changes angle right there. They're actually separated. So there's like a computer screen on the bottom, and then the GPS board is full of foil It looks kind of like a spaceship or a space satellite, where it's got a bunch of aluminum foil and it's all covered, and there's a little bitty antenna, well, not a little antenna, but there's definitely an antenna in there. On the Nomad, it's a little different. The Nomad's antenna is at the top, and it's a small antenna, probably the size of the word Geo 7X on my screen, where the Geo antenna is this whole thing in red right there. So I hope, does that kind of help out a little bit?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so if you don't have an external antenna, then we can, in this spot, you could say, you could put your antenna height roughly how high you hold it up. You know, I'm only a little over 5 foot, you know, I'm short, 5'8" or something like that. When I'm holding this GPS in the hand, it's only about 4.5, 4 foot tall. So I'm not worried about elevation in this particular case. That the height wouldn't matter. If I did worry about it, then you'd want to get an exact measurement. But even then, if you're just using the antenna or the Geo without on a pole attached at a specific height, that 4 foot is not always it may not be a good measurement for you. But I don't think y'all are collecting vertical data, so I would say set it to about 4 feet. And what you could do is you could actually turn it off instead of it asking for the antenna height. When you create the file, it's going to automatically know that, hey, this is a Geo 7 internal. It's set to 4 foot. Don't ever ask for that. And when I go to create the file in a minute, it's not going to it's going to skip that step. So I hope that kind of helps what you were asking for.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Okay, good. We'll go over real time in a little bit. I'm going to collect some data without real time. Coordinate system, I'm just going to set this to latitude, longitude. Since I'm not in Florida. Let me check one thing. I do want my elevation to be mean sea level here. Yeah, it's at mean sea level. Okay. All right, and we won't really cover anything else in here. Now I'm going to go on the main menu up here. So I was on setup. I'm now going to go to data. So my file type's going to be a rover. Anytime we're collecting field data, it's rover. My location is default. That's basically on the device under the My Documents folder. I don't have an SD card plugged into this Geo. If I did, I would have stored it there. Here is the name of the file. It automatically names it R for rover, December 4th, so that's 12:04. And my time right now is a little over after 1, so it's 13A. If I want to change this name, I could just say, I could just give it a name. It's not a problem. It's really up to you. I like the default because I can tell when that file was created, but I know a lot of people like to name it based on a project or field worker that day. And then finally, sometimes you have to scroll down to see the data dictionary. If the menu's in your way, the keyboard, there's a little keyboard symbol at the bottom. You click on that, it'll move the symbol out the way. Or let's say you want to type. If you don't see a keyboard, you just click on that keyboard symbol at the bottom. And then you pick your data dictionary. The training one is the one we made on Monday in our first session. So I'm just going to hit create. Now remember, I told it to never ask me the antenna height, so it should go straight into the software with our features ready to collect. So let me hit create here. So now it's making a file called ATL training. It skipped asking for the antenna information because we told it not to. And now we are ready to collect some data. Before I do so, just kind of point out what we have here. I have 16 satellites. My accuracy is kind of bouncing around a little bit. It's at 20 inches. If I actually click on this word 20, or the actual the line with the 2 arrows, you'll see my estimated accuracy in the field is 24 feet, and my processed accuracy is kind of bouncing around. It's on a roof and under kind of an overhang right now, but it's bouncing around. But you'll see that after we process, the data gets a lot better. So uncorrected data can be up to 30 feet off. So we either have a correction in the field or we clean it up in the office software. So I'm going to show both ways of how to do that. The first thing that we're going to do here in this collect tab is I'm going to go to options, and the default when you install the software, it has it set to log now. So just to show you how that works, if I click on rare plants clumping and I have it set to log now, it starts logging right away. And I personally don't like that, because if I'm not ready, I might be in the wrong spot. So then I have to basically cancel out and restart. So what I like to do is set up my options to log later. That way, when I click on rare plants clumping or whatever feature I want, it starts off paused. So it's not logging the GPS. So you see here in the top right, next to the estimated accuracy, I have a pause sign with a 0. I can then fill out my information, fill out my form. You know, we kept this very simple. But you can see here my form. Basically, if you have a paper form that you'll fill out in the field, I would make a data dictionary to match that. Put a note in here. Training test, if I can spell. It automatically put in the date and the time. And then at the bottom, we have a photo here. I'm going to click on this. You'll see this little button. It's like a camera icon. You click on that. And sorry, my little makeshift desk here. Since I'm inside, we're just going to take a picture of my mouse pad. So I use that center button. A lot of people mistake by hitting the OK button. So if you just open the camera app and hit OK, it doesn't actually take a picture. You actually have to use the center button on the Geo to take the picture. And you know it's successful once you hit OK. It'll put a little attachment there under photo, and then you'll see a thumbnail. So that means it works. And if you have more than one photo, you can then just click on the camera icon again. It brings up the camera icon on the Geo, and you can snap. The same would work for the Nomad, because it has a built-in camera. There'll be a camera icon. You click on that, it activates the camera, and then you can take the picture. Now, the last thing I did is I need to log my position. So if I tried to store it right now, if I hit done, it's going to warn me no positions were recorded. That's why it says the 0 right here. Do you want to store it? I'm going to tell it no, and I'm going to hit log. So that's one thing you have to remember to do. And right now, it's averaging positions. And when you do this, you want to be standing still while it averages. You don't want to be walking around with the GPS. This is for point features. We say 10 to 15 is fine, or 5 to 10 is fine. And when you're finished, you can hit pause, or you just hit done, and that will store the point. If I walk to a new location and I'm ready to log another point, I can click on it, I can fill out some information, and then hit log, let it go to 5 or 10 seconds, hit done, and I keep moving on. If you find something that isn't in your list, in this case, let's say we want to do a point generic. I'm going to say a gate. I ran across a gate. I'm going to log this in, 5 to 10 seconds, and then I'm going to hit done. Any questions on how to log a point? It's fairly straightforward.
How did you change the log thing to like log when you want to versus logging now?
Okay, perfect. So I'm under the data menu here, and under collect, we have this, so I'm under the data main menu. I'm under the collect submenu, the second menu here, collect features, and we have this options button. And I changed it, it was set to log now, I changed it to log later.
Oh, okay, thanks.
And while I'm in here, let's say I want to repeat. So I'm going to turn on repeat. Let's see how this works. I'm going to click on rare plants individual. And I'm just going to say number 1. I'm going to change the family to other. put test. Now, if I log this and store it, and now I'm going to click on rare plants again, and it's going to repeat everything I had before. And this can be helpful if you're collecting data on very similar stuff, and a lot of the information is the same. You can turn on repeat, and then maybe the ID number, well, the ID number would change. So let's say the ID number is like 8. But everything else is the same. I could then store that. I wonder when I did that if the repeat did the time. I don't think it repeated that. Sorry, I forgot to log. You can also go in there and change stuff. But like if your plant species, the family, I think we had another one in there. If a lot of that's similar, you could turn on repeat and only change the stuff you need. So that was, again, that's under options as well. You can turn on and off repeat. If I had repeat on, I like using it actually. When I build the data dictionary for this rare plants, for the ID number, when I built the data dictionary, I would have turned on don't allow the repeat under ID, because I know that one's going to change. And I'll show you. We'll flip it over to the software real quick, and I will open up your project, and we'll go back into that data dictionary I built, or that we built on Monday. This one, and I'll just show you what I mean by that. I'm on rare plants. I'm going to click on ID, and you see this feature repeat button. If I turn that to omit from repeat and hit OK and save it, I'd have to send it back over to the device. But if I did that, next time we went to collect the point, that would not repeat. So that's what that omit from repeat is. So that's kind of helpful. All right. I'm going to cancel that. So that's point features. Let's go look at them on a map. So I'm going to click on my main menu, which is data right now. I'm going to go to map. And I don't have any backgrounds here. We're going to kind of go over the screen here. So at the top, you have a pointer icon. This is a select tool. If I click the drop down, you have like a fixed zoom in. So if I click on zoom in, I click on the screen, I hold down on the screen, and I draw a diagonal, and it draws a box. As long as I don't let off the screen, the box stays there. When I'm ready to zoom in, I just let go of them. In this case, it's my mouse, but it'd be the stylus on the Geo, and it'll zoom in. That's a fixed zoom in. We got fixed zoom out. The pan lets you move around the map. You can measure, you can digitize, all that fun stuff. So those are a bunch of tools there. I'm going to set it back to select. At the bottom, we have some pan tools as well. So left moves the map, to the left. Let's see where it moved it. I don't know where it moved it. Let me zoom out. Okay, so I zoomed out a mile. It pans it way over. Okay, well, it pans the map up, down, left, right. The circle with the plus sign is a fixed zoom in. So if you click on it, it just zooms in a specific scale. You keep hitting it, it'll keep zooming in. Circle with minus is zoom out. Circle with the equal, I'm going to click on that right now. That'll make the full extent of your map. And then there's the undo button, which will go back to my last extent. So typically when I come in the map window, the first thing I do is hit equals. And it should bring in your map where you're at. Now, my antenna is sitting outside and it's not moving around. So if I were to measure these points, they're going to be within 30 feet. That's because they're shot in with uncorrected data so far. They haven't been corrected. If I measure, we should probably see a 30-foot shift between the two. Now, in this case, it's only 4 foot. But there is definitely some movement going on with the uncorrected signal. The little X you see bouncing around the map, that's me, or that's my GPS. And then those little bitty dots, that's kind of the GPS breadcrumb It just kind of follows where we're at. They'll disappear after a while, but if you don't want to see those, you can go under options and where's that button? There's a way to turn off that. Let's see, layers. Oh, here it is. It's under layers. Sorry about that. GNSS trail. If I turn that off, you won't see those little dots. If I turn it on, you'll see that. So that's just a little bit about the map. I actually like to work in the map view because in the top right, you're going to see a circle. If you click on that circle, you'll then see all the features. So I like to see as I'm collecting, I like to see what I'm doing. When we were in the other screen, you didn't really know if you were collecting a point or what happened. It just disappeared. In this case, let's do it. Well, let me cancel. I'm going to do one more point feature. I don't want to hop right into the line feature just yet. I'm going to do another point generic. Call this on the roof. So it lets you go back to the data screen. It lets you log. Once you hit and store the point, and I hit done, it's going to bring me back in my map. The last thing you shoot has a black box around it. So if I take the select tool here and I click on the select tool, it'll then tell me it's a point generic. It's the 6th point I've shot in so far. It gives me a comment of roof, and then it gives me my coordinates here in the city, and then my elevation. I know that elevation is wrong. I know we're underwater here in New Orleans. Actually, my yard's 1 foot above sea level, but it's on my roof, so it's got to be about 12 foot up in the air. So that's only like, well, that's showing minus 2 point something feet, 2.8 feet. Okay. So that is the map view. You can use the measure tool here. We did that a minute ago. You can measure things on the map. Let's go into options. We have a lot of zoom extents. That's the same as hitting that other button over here. It's pretty much the same button. Auto pan to GNSS. Sometimes maybe you have a map or your screen, you shot in something a mile away and you want to zoom to it. You can select it and say automatically pan to it or automatically pan to my GPS. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom way out so you can see how it works. We'll just put the map off the screen. All right, so my map disappeared. If I click on options and say auto pan to GNSS, it should move me to the GPS. I always just use the equal sign. It's at the bottom of the map. It's easier. Filter. We'll kind of go over a little bit of this now. You can have features turn on and on, based on or off, based on if they've been updated. You can filter things by plants clumping by a certain attribute. So let's say you want to find all rare plants containing species equal to, and then this picture plant. We can hit done, and it would then show one selected here. It's this one that's dark. So you can filter those. You can it's kind of like symbolizing in Esri desktop your features. So you can symbolize different things there or filter different things there. All right, so that's filtering. I'm going to turn that off. I don't use that too much. I do have a few customers that use it. We'll go over navigation a little later and entering coordinates a little later. Layers, you have the ability to load a background image. So in Pathfinder Office, you can load an image in there and transfer it to the GPS. And in that case, we could turn on background files, and then we could, if I had an image in here, it would show up. If I wanted to see a previous day's work, I'll show you. I collected data. Which file am I in right now? I collected data today, I think. Yep. Okay, so this is the file I collected this morning down the street, or down my street in the front yard. It's just a background file right now. I can't select it and get any information from it, but it shows me like, oh, I collected data around here, so I won't go and recollect that. So that was just under layers, background, and I turned on my existing data. If I try to select it, it's just going to give me a map point. This gives me a coordinate. So it's just for background, just for viewing. So I'm going to go turn that off. So that was under background files, show data files, and then I had turned that on. So that could be helpful for you. That is pretty much about it for the map screen. Like I said, I prefer to use this screen because I can collect data right in here from the map screen, and it comes back. So do you have any questions or comments on map screen? Okay, we will keep going. Let's see what else we have here. I'll go back to data. And now I'm going to show a line feature. A line and a polygon are collected the same way. They're a little bit different than a point. Basically, the way it works, for a line, it has a beginning and an end. So if I hit log, it's going to automatically log every second. So as you're walking, it's logging. You can change the time and let it log every couple seconds. You can let it log every 10 feet if you want. If at any time I hit pause, I can pause that line feature. If I need to start again, I can hit resume. I'm just going to pause it. Test line. I'm going to hit done. So my lines is going to be a bunch of squiggly. Well, it's going to be a clump of lines since it's not really moving. Anyway, there's the line on the screen. So it has a beginning over here and an end over here. Polygon is similar to a line. So if I do manage area, the only difference here is it's going to start as you walk your area feature, or your polygon feature. When you get close to the end, you hit finish, and wherever you're standing, it's going to snap a line back to where it started from. So in this case, you'll see it bouncing around. Here's my X. Once I hit done, I'm going to hit the red square here to finish it. Feature stored. If I go back to the map, we should then see a polygon. Again, it's on the roof, so it's not doing a great job of showing a lot of detail. That polygon's really small. Another interesting thing you can do when you're doing lines in area features, I'll do a line feature here. I'm going to log this. So let's say I'm walking down the stream, and I walk maybe 100 feet, and then I run across some flowers that I need to collect data on. I can pause the feature. I can then go to options, and we have this tool here called Nest. If I click on it, you'll see all the point features I have in my data dictionary. I have the option to click on them. So let's say walk down the stream, I ran across these clumping plants. So I want to log this clumping plant in. I would give it an ID. I maybe fill out some information, and then I hit log to store that point feature. Once I've logged enough positions, I finish the point feature, and you'll see it puts me right back in my waterway line feature, and I just keep on walking. I hit resume, keep walking a little ways. If I run across something else, I can pause, options, I can go back to Nest, and let's say this time I ran across something else. I can't spell, but anyway, I log in something else here. Golfer. I spelled it wrong. Oh well. I'm back in my line. I can keep walking down the waterway, and when I'm finished, I hit done. So basically, I collected 2 point features while I was collecting this line feature. You could also do it this way, where you could collect a line feature like this. You can walk a little ways. You can hit done. And then let's say I want to go back in and work on that line feature. If I click on the word collect, we have this menu called update features. In here, you'll see the list of everything you've collected throughout this file. And at the bottom is my last one. If I want to continue working on that line, I just hit the word begin. So you see the waterway here is selected. That's the one I just did. If I hit begin and I hit log, it's going to say, hey, do you want to replace the whole thing? Or do you want to append and continue what you were doing? And I would just hit append. And then I'm working on that line again. Nesting just lets you don't have to go through all those steps. It's just a lot easier to do. So I'll get out of this menu.
Like a polygon too, or is it just for line?
Line and polygon. So
Okay.
if I do a polygon here, I can do log for a little bit. And if I hit pause and come back here to options, nest, click a point generic. Log something in. Puts me back in my polygon feature. I'll hit resume, keep walking, and just keep repeating if you need to. So it's kind of helpful, especially if you're walking a long way. So you don't have to walk back to something. You can always use that. And it's only available while the feature is open. So you see here, I'm in options. I don't see it. It's only when I'm, oops, wrong one. Nesting is only available when you have a line or polygon feature open, and then you'll see it under options. So while we're in here, the last thing I'll talk about with collecting the data part is this options button. We have a way to log a vertex. So when we did line before and it was logging every second, and as you're walking, it's just dropping a point. Vertex is like shooting in point features and connecting the dots. So for a stream, I wouldn't do this, but maybe for a parking lot, or if your managed area had a boundary made by like flagging or trees, or or a stake in the ground, you could do a vertex, and basically it draws straight lines between the points. So if you want straight lines between your points, you would come up here and you would say new vertex, and it automatically starts logging a point, or a vertex, if you will. I hit done. This is where a lot of people get confused, because it says right here, vertex 1 open. If I hit pause, the vertex is still open. If you move to the next spot and continue to log the vertex, it's going to merge those as one point. So I hit done, and what you'll see now is you have a pause and a number 1. So I logged the beginning of a line feature here. Let's say I want to walk another 50 feet. I have a marker that I need to shoot in. So I don't want to log anything in between that. So I go options, new vertex. Once I get to that second point where the line turns, when I'm done storing that, I hit done. And now I have a pause and a number 2. I can then walk another, say, 50 feet. And let's say there's something else, a tree I want to shoot in as my marker. I then hit new vertex. And basically, just to show you on my map here, I'll have straight lines. It's getting a little messy in here with all these points. Straight lines between those 3 vertexes we shot in. So this can be done with lines and areas. You would hit done, it would store that out. You can also mix and match. You can log a vertex. This is if you want a really good solid point, good point on your starting line. You hit done. It stores a good vertex there, and then if you hit resume, it'll then log every second. A good example of this is if you're in a parking lot. Let's zoom into something here. So here at the lake, if I wanted to log a vertex on this parking lot, this is pretty much a straight line from here to here. So I'd log a vertex here. It logs a single point. I walk down here. It doesn't do anything in between. I log a vertex here. It'll draw a straight line between the two. But then the parking lot starts to curve around. So then I want to hit resume, and it'll log every second. And I'll walk around as long as it's curvy. And then when it gets back straight, maybe right here, I would log a vertex. And then maybe right here, I would log a vertex. And if this was a polygon feature, if I hit finish, it would snap a line back to the start. So it's just a way to kind of clean the data up a little bit. But if your area, if it's a stream, you probably just run it with the regular log feature. If it's a managed area that has a lot of curves in it, you probably run it with regular log as well. Vertex is only if you want to have some nice straight lines. That's probably the hardest thing in the software to learn, is how to do the vertex. All right. That's kind of it as far as point line and polygon data collection. We're about an hour in. So let's see, where should we go now? I'm going to close the file. So I'm going to go to data. That's the main menu. If I was in status, whatever the main menu is, I want to exit out of this file. So I'm going to exit. It's going to say, you sure you want to close and exit TerraSync? You know what, I messed it up. I just want to close the file. Let me go back to data. I'm just going to hit close. Sorry about that. I'm used to just exiting out of the software. So the data file is closed. Let's say I move to a new project. I could start a new one. But what I want to show you is, let's say I closed the file because I went to lunch and I didn't want to leave the GPS login during lunch. And then let's say it's after lunch and I want to start back up. I open TerraSync, but instead of creating a new file, I want to open an existing file. So I click on the word new. That's the submenu under data. I go to existing file. And then from here, you can pick the file you want to work on. So I'm going to go with this one this afternoon, 12.4. It's the ATL training. Unfortunately, I named both my files the same thing this morning, or close to the same thing. I'm going to hit open, and it opens up with that file. Now, the difference here is it opens it up with this update screen, because the software thinks you want to make some changes to the data. We don't really want to do that. We just want to go in here to collect new data. So once the file's open, I click on update and just go to collect, and it gets you back where you can start collecting again. So that's kind of how you open an existing file. Another thing that you can do in the update features window is, let's say you want to know how long a specific waterway or line feature is that you shot in. If you go in the update menu and you scroll down in your list of features, if you click on that feature, at the bottom, it gives you length in 2D, length in 3D. It does the same thing for area. And these units are based on what you have set up under settings units. In this case, I have survey feet, and I have square feet set for my area. That is really the only thing that I do in the update screen. The other thing I would do in here is, let's say I forgot to fill out an attribute. I can highlight the feature. If I hit begin, I can actually change some attributes around. It'll store that. Let's say the position was wrong, you can relog the position. For new data collection, this typically isn't used, this update. That's more for customers that maybe have a system. Let's say it's a water customer with water meters and their stuff's all off and they're going to update the positions. can use the update tool for that. But it is here if you want to change attributes, look at the information, you can see it. All right, let's see where we can go now. Since we're under data, let's go to File Manager. So data is the main menu, submenu, I'm going to choose File Manager. Here's where I can go in and manage my files. So if I want to get rid of a file, let's say my GPS is full of files, it's getting slow. I have some of our sales team where they may have 100 files on here and their GPS is running a little bit slow. It's because they're filling up all the memory with these files. These files run about a meg an hour. In this case, this one we did is a little bigger. It's because I shot in a picture. But if it's just raw GPS, it runs about 1 megabyte per hour. And if you collect all day over a year, you can see how these kind of add up. So if you want to get rid of some files, you basically can highlight it and then go to Options, and you can say delete. I'm not going to do that. It's going to give me an error message. Hey, this file hasn't been transferred. Are you sure you want to delete it? I don't want to delete this one, so I'm going to tell it no. Let's see if this one has been transferred. I'm not going to delete it because I don't know if I have a backup of this data right now. But that's how you would go in and manage files. Well, let's do this. We'll make a copy of it. So I'll click on it, Options, Copy to, Default. It's going to make a copy of that file. And then if I wanted to delete something, I could go in there and Options, Delete. Now that one didn't get a warning message because it had already been transferred. The reason I know that is if you click here, I'll click on Anders. At the bottom, it says 64 features were shot, 262 positions, and the status, it has been transferred. In this case, that file used the generic data dictionary. If I go up to this top one, the ATL training that we've been working on, it says I've shot in 16 features so far, 219 GPS positions. It has not been transferred. Let's see. If you want to look at data dictionary files, you can choose file by type, and you can change data dictionaries and look at them. In this case, I only have one. If I had background files, you could look at that. They would show up. This is kind of like your Windows Explorer, all your different files, you can see them. Mostly people are looking at data files, and they just clean these up by getting rid of them. The other thing that you can do in here is under Options, is you can export this right to a shapefile. If you wanted to, you could. And if I'm just going to say write this to a file, it doesn't like it when a file is opened. Okay, let's write this one to a file. Oops, sorry. Cancel. I'm going to choose write data to shapefile. Now this is going to put it in the coordinate system that you have set in the device, and then right now it's set for lat long. But if I did have it set to state plane, it would have did that. The only thing that I suggest you watch out for, if you do write to shapefile right here, this data was collected with no correction, so the accuracy is not that good right now. If I collected it with my high accuracy, you can definitely export it out of here. The other option too is you can read data from shape. So if you had some shape files loaded on the device, and I said read data from shape, I could do that, and it would bring that file in. We select some shape files, okay. I'm going to put the shape files. I'm not sure where it wrote the shape files to. Anyway, you can bring them in, and it would let you work on those shape files. And the last thing here is that extract data from file. And I know the other day there was a question like, if I start a data file today, after a week, So if I started on, let's say we start on Monday, and then the following Monday we go to open that file and work on it, we get a message that says the time span is longer than a week. You can't collect. So like, I'll do that right now. I'm going to go close this file. That Anders file is older than a week. So let's say we want to open this. I should get an error message. Well, maybe I didn't. Okay, there we go. Thought I was about to eat my own words there. So if you try to work on a file that's over a week old and you go to log the GPS, you're going to get this unable to append to a file over 1 week old. And that's set up how the software was written. This software is probably 20 plus years old now. I've probably been using it a good bit of 15 years. So it's been out a while. But anyway, the way this was written, the GPS clock starts over every week, or at least how they store these files. So that's why it has that option there, or that message. So to fix that, one option would be, if you need to actually work on that file, you go back to Data, File Manager, you would select the file, and you would say Options, Extract Data from File. And it's going to create what we call a split file. You highlight it, you hit Extract, and what it's going to do is it's going to make a copy of the old one. So that one can be processed by itself, and then it makes a copy that you can use to start collecting on. So if I go now to existing file and I open up Anders, let's see if I have to open the split. Yep, so now I would be able to, let's see. Yep, I'd be able to log. In that case, there wasn't anything in the file. That's how you would split a file open. Not sure why my data wasn't in there. Let's see if this will let me do it. Nope, okay. No, there must be something there. I'll have to ask Trimble. There should have been some data in that file. But that's how the extract data works. I think, well, I got one more thing to cover with the data collection, and then we'll take a little break for questions. Let me go back and open up our training. So I'm gonna go with a point generic feature right now, and I'm gonna go options offset. So our software allows you to offset in 3 different ways. We have distance bearing, distance distance, triple distance, bearing bearing, and triple bearing. Honestly, I don't really use anything with the bearings down here. I don't use triple distance much. I use the second one quite a bit. Oops. And I use the let me cancel out of that. I use the distance offset. So just show you what that looks like. I'm going to bring up a presentation that shows these offsets. And I can share this training guide with y'all as well. 580. So I'll send y'all this training guide. And let's see. Okay. Oh, did he take it out of there? Okay, here we go. All right. So if we go with a distance bearing offset, basically, if your geo has the laser on it, you would stand in one spot. So offsets are done if you can't get a good position under something. Like, let's say you were trying to get some flowers, but it was covered by a bunch of trees around it, or too close to a building, and you're not able to shoot in what you want. You basically stand in the open where the GPS is good, So that's what this reference position is here. So you log your point of where you're standing, and then you take the rangefinder. It has a built-in compass on the device, and you fire the laser, and it gives it a bearing from true north, and it gives it a distance. And you can see here how it's moved that point from where we're standing and say maybe a bearing of, 8 degrees at 100 feet, and it puts the point over there. The next one is called a distance. Let me go back. You don't need a Trimble integrated laser to do these offsets. You could have a compass, that'll give you your bearing, and you can have a tape measure, that'll give you your distance. You can have your little rangefinder that just does distance. So it doesn't have to be an integrated system. It could be a tape measure and a compass. Distance is a little bit different. Basically, we stand at point A right here on the map, and this is in the page, they start on page 67, 68, 69, and probably go down to like 72 on the offsets here, but I'm on page 69. I'm sitting on reference point A. I shoot a distance to my feature. It draws a buffer around A. There's my circle. I walk over to a different place that's in the open. I fire back at my feature. Let's say it's 10 feet away. It draws a smaller circle, draws a buffer. And then our two circles intersect in two spots. So the software asks, as I go from point A to point B, was the feature on my left or my right? So it knows where to put the point. The last one here we'll talk about is this triple distance. And basically, you take 3 shots, 3 reference positions, 3 shots with the rangefinder or tape measure. You don't have to tell it what direction it is because they all 3 intersect in one spot. So that's offsetting. I will show it in action here. So I'm actually going to fire my laser. Let's see here. Shoot my water bottle. Oh, it brought up the camera. Sorry, let me do something here. I need to change a button. Let's see where it's at. Under personal, under buttons, I can change the center button and these left and right keys that we had on the screen earlier on this presentation. These application keys right here. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going in and saying, all right, I'm going to program this middle button for the rangefinder. You could also program these other 2 buttons. So I'm kind of going to change this camera to the rangefinder. Oops. Center button, camera. Now once I change it to rangefinder, it'll automatically know that the camera's attached to that button as well. So if you ever had to do this, it should work now. All right. So my rangefinder comes up. Now this rangefinder has all these different workflows. If we were just doing offsets, that's what we're doing right now. We use that method. This rangefinder can also be used to determine the height of a tree, maybe the width of a tree, maybe the spread, the width of a building, the width of a stream. So you see here, you can change these up depending on what you want to shoot. I'm going to pick offset. It looks like I may have to reinstall this module. It's not seeing it. Okay. Well, I apologize for that. I'll have it ready when we do our next session. I will set that rangefinder back up. All right, let's try this again. So I don't know if y'all have one of those. We can definitely cover it, but I'll just do it manually right now. I'm going to say offset, distance bearing. So the way this works is, let's say my bearing is 15 degrees. All the rangefinder would do is it would automatically populate this. I'm just going to put in 100 feet at 15 degrees. Let's say that's what I'm shooting in. I log my GPS position of where I'm standing. All right, now if I go look at my map, we hit equals, you'll see where my X is here in the middle of the screen, but my feature that I just shot is 100 feet away at 15 degrees. So that's going to be down my street a little ways. We'll see where that ends up. So that's kind of how an offset works. I think that's kind of it for right now. Is there any questions up to now? There's one more screen here, navigation we'll cover, but let me just kind of open it up for a minute. I'm going to take a sip of water. Any specific questions that you may have on collecting, or I know it's a lot of stuff. If you got any specifics, just let me know.
I mean, what do we really need to use the rangefinder for?
What's that?
Like, why do we really need to use rangefinder?
Sure. So it would be like, well, one example, let's say you're walking, if y'all have a stream and there's a feature across the stream and you didn't want to cross the stream, you could use the rangefinder to shoot it in. Sometimes some of my customers, they go to shoot in, they need high accuracy data, and they're under a tree or next to a building. They can't get that high accuracy that they want, so they have to stand in the open so the GPS gets good satellites, and they use the rangefinder to move the location from where they're at to the tree or whatever feature they're shooting in. Another one would be a fenced-in area. Let's say you can't get inside the fenced-in area, but there's something in there that you have to collect data on. Customers will use the GPS to shoot the target in that area. Yeah, my rangefinder needs to be pulled off. So I hope that helps. It's basically when you can't get to something, the rangefinder allows you to move that position based on the distance bearing or distance. Okay. All right. Let's see. We got 220. Okay. So what I'm going to do, the last thing here is for navigation, and then we will go over transferring and looking at the file, and that'll put us about 15 minutes left to kind of go over some basics. Navigation. So if you ever have to go out to something and find it, let's say a year ago you guys found a rare plant that you want to go back and see how it's doing. One option would be somebody give you a coordinate that you want to go to. If that's the case, you would first, we're just going to say my coordinate that they're giving it to me is going to be in latitude, longitude. And let's say under my units, let's say it's in decimal degrees, which it is. So they're giving me lat and long in decimal degrees. I'm going to hit done. So you got to make sure your coordinate system's set the same. I go back to navigation. I want to enter a waypoint. So there's two ways to do this. If somebody gives you a coordinate, it's called a waypoint. If you have an existing file that you want to use, you can just open that file and select the point. But right now we're going to make a waypoint here. So first thing you have to do is create a new file. So it's just saying W for waypoint 1204. We'll just stay with that. And now I have this blank screen. I need to enter the waypoint. So my option here is click on options and I say new. I'm going to say champion tree. All right, now I don't have any coordinates off the top of my head right now. So I'm going to just cheat right now, and I'm just going to say create from GPS. So that's where my antenna's sitting right now, but I'm going to cheat as well again. And I'm going to say that this is I'm going to say this tree is 50 foot away from me to the west. So let's just say somebody gave me the right coordinate. I'm just kind of making up coordinates right now because I need to have something that's not where my position is. But if you had a coordinate, you would type it in here. In this case, I just used the GPS, and I'm just making an offset. So I just made a tree. It's 50 feet away. If I highlight it, if I double click it, it sets it as a target. You see here it has two little flags. The other option here is you can set the target under options. If I want to use my GPS, I can say set nav start. All right, now once you have your waypoint selected, you click on waypoint and go to navigate. And basically this screen is going to tell you where to walk, how to get there. The arrow is pointing behind me, so I'd have to start walking. Now, since my GPS antenna is out, so I can try to drag it on the roof here. Let's see if we can make this mimic changing a little bit. Oh, hang on, I got open. Hang on real quick. You'll see here as I pull this, the distance is going to get shorter. I'm going to lose satellites though. Well, it may not get shorter. I'm going away from it. I pulled it towards me, and the feature's in the backyard. But basically, as you walk, this device is going to tell you where to go. If the arrow is pointing down like that, it's basically saying, hey, turn around, you're going the wrong direction. If it's pointing to the left, you basically just chase the arrow. So in this case, I need to go down, and it's going to kind of bounce around right now, but you have a distance here. It tells you where to go. When you get within 10 feet, you're going to hear this little beeping noise. Let me put one. I'm going to make another one. That's a little closer. Now, if I select this one, it's 10 feet away. When I go to navigate, you should see it's a different, maybe it's closer than that. Let me make one more. Oh, I didn't set it. There it goes. So when you get within like 10 feet, it'll beep at you. And then it gives you a circle, and you just basically try to fit the X in the circle. In this case, you can see it's within a foot. So as you're navigating with that arrow, when you get close, within, I think the number's 15 feet. I think it's right here. Is it set right here somewhere? 16 feet. It beeps at you. So that's kind of how you do waypoints. You can actually flag a line too. You can use like the map screen. And let's say I want to set a target up here 100 feet away. Oops. I want to set a target from here. Set nav target. So that'll put my crosshair up here. And then let's say I want to use one of these points down here as my line. I can say set nav start and pick this one. And now I have a line. And let's say I had to flag a line or flag an area out. I can use this. Now my X is over here. If I go to navigate, it's going to tell me I have a feature here called cross line. So if I click on this and say cross track, it tells me how far I would be away from my my line as I'm walking, so I can know once I get close, I can flag my line. Let me try the other one here. Let me set my start. Okay. So now my cross track should show some numbers. So it's basically telling me I'm 3 or 4 foot off the line. So if I need to flag a line out, you can select 2 features, and then you can see how far you're off that line. So we have some customers that use Navigate quite a bit. I don't know in y'all's line of work if you have to revisit a site to see how things are doing or progressing or not progressing. But you could use Navigate for that. The last thing with Navigate is you don't have to have a waypoint file, so I can close this file. Waypoint, close. These waypoint files can be built in the Office software as well. The other option is, let's say you wanted to load in an existing file. Let's say this is my file here. I'm going to clear the targets. And let's say I want to go to, oops. I'm going to zoom in. Say I want to go to a particular, this picture plant right here. I select it and say options, set nav target. I'll say this plant I picked, and then I can then go to the navigate button. Let me start with the GPS here. I always like to do start so I can see my line or where I'm at. It's going to draw a line from where I'm at to where I want to go. And then you can use the map view to see where you're walking. This menu is so much easier with navigation. You can actually see where you're going and how far away. So, yep. Sorry, all these are within a foot of each other because we're shooting them on the roof. That's why it's beeping so soon. But that's navigation. That's kind of the last thing in all the documents I think I have here. Covered a lot in an hour and a few minutes. The guide I showed earlier, what I would recommend is if y'all do have some time, go out and try to, it's the wrong guide. Shoot a couple points. If y'all have questions, let me know. But basically everything that I'm going to cover in these 4 sessions is in this Trimble training guide here. I'll pass it along, but you'll have the video, you'll have the guide, and then the best thing is this is the hardest part of doing online training is I'm not there with you collecting the data. So hopefully this helps a little bit with the data collection part. Besides that, I mean, next time I'm in Atlanta, I could come by, but this is kind of hard to show without being there in the field. Tried as best I could with the antenna outside, but is there any specific questions? If not, we can jump into the software and just look at the file. I know Carrie was driving, so we'll let her be. Emma, you have any specific questions maybe?
No.
Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to transfer the file. Let's see what we're doing on time. We've got 30 minutes. I'm just going to transfer the file over. We're going to look at the file, and then we'll just call it a day after this part. So my GPS, let's say I come back in from the field, I close TerraSync. Actually, I'm going to leave the file open so you see the error we get when I go to transfer it. So I have my TerraSync on. It is plugged into my computer. I open my project, file projects. It's connected, so I'm going to go utilities, data transfer. So this is how I pull a file from the device. All right. So you got to make sure it's connected. In this case, mine is a USB cable. It's GIS data logger on Windows Mobile. It's got the green checkbox here. It says connected to my geo. And we have two tabs, receive and send. I want to receive a file. In this case, I'm going to say add data file. You only have two options, waypoint or data. I'm going to say data file. And anything that it has highlighted in blue has not been transferred. So you're more than welcome to transfer them all at once. That's fine. I'm just going to start with this top one though. When I go to transfer, it should error out on me. Yep. It says, can I open the TerraSync file? Please make sure it's connected. You have read-write permissions and that the file is not in use. Well, I forgot to close my file. So now I just go on my geo, I say close the file. If I hit retry, it should then transfer. And at the end here, you're going to see it transfer a photo. It was kind of quick. I'm going to close this. I always disconnect that little button before I hit close. And now we're going to go look at the files. On Monday, we talked about Pathfinder Office, our project, and our project folder here. It's the yellow folder with the globe in it. When I open that up, before we had a backup folder, a base, export, and pretty much everything was blank except for our data dictionary here at the bottom. Well, now you'll see the .ssf. It's a Trimble field data file. That's what we just worked on. We see a file up here called ATL training. It's the same name as this SSF file. If I open this up, it has my photo. So when you transfer the file, if it had any photos, it puts them onto the device. And then in my backup folder, I have a backup. So here's our file we transferred. I have a backup of the SSF. And I have there's these 8 files here. Actually, there's 10. Okay. There's typically 8 to 10 files. These are what we call the raw data files. So when you create a file on the device, in this case, we call it ATL training, it creates 8 files that allow it to run quicker on that operating system. When we use data transfer, it takes all of these, in this case, 10 files, it converts them into this .ssf. You can't do anything with these raw files, really. But we have them just in case your file gets corrupted for some reason. Sometimes if the file is open and the unit powers off, it'll corrupt the data file. If that's the case, if you had a bunch of data in there, instead of redoing it all, you could just send me these raw data files. They're located here. They're also located on the device. I'll just open the device up under My Documents, TerraSync. You'll see a file here called ATL Training Test. Oh, it keeps going right here. This particular file had 8. For some reason the reason this other file had more is because of probably the waypoint file we built into it. Anyway, these are the raw files on the device. So you can get them there, or you can just grab them from the backup folder. I can take these files and create an SSF. I can send these files over to Trimble. They can get fixed for any error. Just to kind of give you an idea, the .dd is the data dictionary file. The GIS is the attribute information. Observation is the GPS information. And I have no clue what these other ones are. It's just Trimble files that that's just how their software runs. But anyway, that is the raw data. So if for some reason you accidentally delete the SSF file, you can go back. Typically in the backup, they should have these, and you can just put it back in. So if you ever lose data, backup folder on the computer where the files are transferred to and from, and on the device as well. It's another backup. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go now to File, and I'm going to transfer one more. Data transfer. I'm going to add data file. I'm going to select the other ATL training, open, transfer. Now this one has more data and more pictures, so it's going to take a little bit longer. It probably has 15 or so features and maybe 5 pictures. And we want to look at this data because it's actually went out and collected instead of being on the roof. So I go File, Open. I'm going to pick this training test one. I'm going to hit Open. Now I have a blank map, a screen I should say. If I want to see things, I click on View and go to Map. And I'm going to spend more time on this in our session next Monday. We have View Timeline, and then I have Data, Feature Properties, Data, Position Properties. All of these windows are linked up. So the map, if I select a point in the map, it then shows it on this timeline. It shows me when I collected it. It shows me the feature properties, which are basically the attribute information, and then it shows me the GPS information. In this case, this particular plant shot an average of 12 positions. The accuracy right now is 6 meters, but it was uncorrected. This one had a photo, just to show you the photo. If I click on the photo field, attributes, and I hit open, we have a picture of some plant. If we go down the street, well, let's go to this one. This is a funny one. If we go to this photo, my neighbors have a, oh, that's not it, wrong one. Must be down here. My neighbors have a Christmas display up. Not that one. Oh, that's still my house. Well, I'm not sure where those are at, but at any rate, there we go, Christmas. Anyway, so you can actually see data. In this case, this one has 2 photos. You can edit the data if you wanted. We will cover more of this stuff later on Monday about how to clean this data up, how to process it. You can change colors under layers. So that's kind of what we're going to focus on next week. This session really didn't take up a full 2 hours. Is there anything? Let's see where we're at on time. Yeah, we got a little bit of time. Any questions? I know we're gonna focus a lot more on what we just did, this transfer and looking at the data in our 3rd session, which will be on Monday. But is there anything you may want to see before then, or questions about this?
Are you going to talk about like post-processing the data Monday then?
Yes. Are you gonna be here? Oh, you gotta do drop off on Monday, airport drop off.
Yeah, I've actually done the post-processing before though, but it would be good to have a refresher. So if you record it, I'll just listen to it then.
We can show it real quick. When was this file done? Let's see. Maybe I'll keep it off of this one. Just, well, it's up to you. If you want me to show it, it's probably, I can give the rundown version and then the more in-depth version next week. Is that cool?
Yeah, that would be good. Thanks.
Okay, let's do that then. All right. So now the main thing is when you go to post-process, you can't just come right in from the field and post-process. These base stations log data every hour. Well, they log data all day long. So these base stations are all throughout the U.S. That's what this map is right here. we're going to zoom into where I'm at and see if we can find a station. We got to give it a minute. But every hour, NGS goes and pulls data from these base stations. So from 9 to 10, that file gets written. And at 10 o'clock, NGS will say grab that file. They do their post-processing on it. And they strip out some stuff, and they make a file available to people. And it takes about 10 minutes. So data is available about 10 minutes after the hour. So if you collect data from 9 in the morning to 9:30, you can't go right in and collect. You got to wait till about 10:15. However, if you collect data, and when I train, I try to get it to where we collect data and end before the end of the hour. So let's say we're collecting before lunch. Maybe we'll collect from 11 to 12. If we end before 12 o'clock, that file will be ready about 15 minutes after. So it's good rule of thumb just to wait a couple hours. Some people just wait till the next day. But you definitely need to wait at least an hour, or you'll get an empty file, and then it'll be hard to process it. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to come down to New Orleans. So I'm pretty much right here off the lake. My closest station, apparently this is one on Loyola's campus. Let's go look at it real quick. This is what a base station looks like. In this case, these are Trimble GPS units. That's just a picture of the antenna. Let's go look at it mounted on the roof here. So this is typically mounted on a concrete building. A metal building has a little bit too much, they call it multipath. The signal bounces around. But it's up on a pole, and it's got a big antenna. It's probably about 18 inches around. Looks like a hubcap, really. It's got some lightning rod protectors, and then it's got a cable right here. This green one goes inside. And then Randy should have in his building here, he's got a case. This is what we call a Net R9. This is a Trimble GPS. He's got power to the Net R9. He has the antenna cable coming in. That's this big round one. And then he's got his Ethernet, or his internet. That's the most important part right here, going out to his router somewhere. So this particular network in Louisiana is run by LSU. So this is on pretty much all of the university properties. And they just maybe pay them a small fee to power this thing up. It doesn't take a whole lot. I would be surprised if that whole breaker is just for this. But anyway, that's what it is. It's a GPS receiver in here. The antenna's on the roof. Here's what the mount looks like. It's just leveled up. This is in uptown New Orleans. That's the base station that I'm going to use right now. So what we're going to do here, we're going to go to utilities, and we're going to go to differential correction. If I have the file open, it's going to automatically select that SSF file. You can see that's in the list here. I'm going to turn off all these other screens so that it's not all blocking us up. All right. So basically, it gives us when the file was created. It was created this morning at 9:30, this is Central Time. I ended about 9:52. I collected 311 GPS positions. That's not features. That's just, I averaged points and walked and all that. That's just every time the GPS collects a point. This was collected with a Geo7X H-star, so that gets me sub-foot accuracy. And it says centimeter output enabled, so I may get some centimeter data out of this. I'm going to hit next. If you didn't have a file, you can hit the plus sign. I could actually grab them both if I wanted. I'm only going to process one though. You can open more than one. Next screen, I go with all the defaults. So it even tells you recommended. I always use single base. I'm going to hit next. I don't ever change anything in here, but let's go in here and look at it. So if you hit change, we only want to output corrected positions, and we want to use smart settings. We want Trimble to take care of all that. And then at the bottom, I have here recorrect real time. The reason I have that checked right now is if I collected data with SBAS, which is sub-meter, if I had real time turn on getting sub-meter and collected that, but my device can get if it can get centimeter accuracy, well, I would want to recorrect those positions anyway. So that's why those are on. So I hit OK, I'm gonna hit next. This is the most important screen, the base page. So first thing we need to do is the default here is the top one, base provider search. You hit select. If you haven't done this in a while, you need to hit this update list button. It's going to go out to the internet. It's going to download the most recent update of the base stations. It always minimizes mine down on the bottom screen for some reason, so I got to pick it back up. And the way this works, once it's updated, you pick the one closest to you. Top on the list is closest. So you can see here, distance is 7 kilometers. L, they all need to say L. That's like L1. I'm sorry, L2. It may not all say L2, but anything you use these days should. G stands for GLONASS. So you definitely want GLONASS station if you can, because our device was collecting GPS and GLONASS. But basically, I start with the closest one. Integrity, we don't really mess with integrity anymore. And you see here, if I click on it, it sorts it by integrity, and the closest one is 500 miles. I'm going to go back to distance. So basically, go off a distance, closest one. Hopefully, it has a GLONASS, so that's the G, and then we just hit OK. Now, so that's important. The next important thing is this reference position. We have two positions. One is the default here, this base station position. I'm sorry, the base station list position. This is typically a WGS84/ITRF position. Oh, well, this is not a good example. The positions are the same. Typically, it says a different. Let me find one that's not Randy's. Where's Mississippi? These guys. So this reference position is basically old WGS84/ITRF. And I might be speaking Greek right now. I'll kind of dig into this a little more later. But if you're running state plane data, like Florida state plane, Georgia state plane, I would use the top one. The base file, the positions in what we call NAD83. So state plane is NAD83, but it's running the most recent one called 2011. So if you want your data to line up with imagery and all that fun stuff and be on the most recent system, the most recent datum, I use this top one, reference position from base files. Default, confirm base data is always unchecked. That has to be checked. And we're going to hit next. I will spend more time on reference position next week. I leave this default. I hit start. So what it's doing is it's going out. It's trying to find a file from the Loyola base station from 9 o'clock till 10 o'clock today. And what we're looking for while it does this is 100% coverage. If you try to process too soon, you're not going to get 100% coverage. Or sometimes base stations go down. A storm rolls through, a pretty bad storm rolls through, the base may go down, and it may say 0 coverage. So this is really important for you to check. Because if you don't check this and it zips on through, you might get an empty file, and then you're like, where's all my data? So we told it to output corrected only. Once you verify 100% coverage, you hit confirm, and now it's doing a lot of math in the background. What I mean by that, these are just shortcuts to turn all the menus back on. If I select this tree here, and I go to positions, this particular tree, or whatever it was I shot in there, rare plants individual, it was collected data on 9:51 in 9 a.m., 51 minutes, 20 seconds. And I averaged 10 positions. If I click on DOPS, I had probably 15 or more satellites right here they collected. When we look at this point, my accuracy on this point is not good right now. It says 2.9 meters, so it's about 10 foot. It's uncorrected data. There is error in GPS signal. As it goes through the atmosphere, it bounces around. It's all based on time. As it bounces around, the time gets larger, your position gets worse. So what's going on is that base station tracks most of these same satellites right here at the same time. So it's basically going and saying, okay, at 9:51:20, satellite number 10 from the GPS constellation had this much error in the signal. Let's adjust your position that much. It's doing all this math for each one of these satellites, for each one of these positions. So that's what's going on in the background. We don't have to do it by hand anymore. Some poor person back in the early 90s had to do that by hand. And basically, here's my data. Now, I didn't have an antenna. I was working near trees the whole time. So you can see my data doesn't fall in this 2.5-inch range here. 10 centimeters is pretty much 4 inches. But you see, I have some data that kind of falls in here. So this is of all of my 311 positions. So now, if I open Pathfinder Office and go to Open, I now have a file here, same name, ATL Training Test, COR. That means it's a corrected, Trimble corrected data. If I open that up, and now we look at that same tree, it was at 2 meters. Now it's at 0.2 meters. And I'm going to put this in inches so it makes more sense for me. 6 inches that tree was shot in. So now that we've cleaned this data up, you know, some of these are going to be worse than others. 15 inches. I'm looking down here at the bottom. 11 inches in my road. You know, that's kind of what it does to clean up the data. That's processing in the short term before we have your training next week on this. But that is pretty much it. Once you find a base station, if you're always working in Florida and you find the Crestview station works for you, next time you go to process, you can just select the file. I'll just pick it again. And you can just blow through it. Next.
Correction wizard again?
Yep, what's that?
How did you get to the correction wizard? What would you do press again?
Utility. Everything's pretty much in utilities.
Oh,
utilities,
okay.
differential correction. Or you got this little button over here on the left. But once you use this and you find a good station that you know is reliable, you can now select it and just kind of blow through it. But you do need to read this one screen right here. So you are more than welcome. Once you get used to it, you can go through it pretty quick. You can process the same data file more than once on different stations to find a station that works better for you. You're kind of surrounded by 3 in your area. So you may find one works better than the other. In this case, I used the same file. I guess I should have processed it. Let's do it with another station that's further away. The closer, the better. If I pick a station that's 50 miles away, the accuracy is going to get a lot worse. So this time, I'm going to pick a station, let's say 50 miles away. The accuracy is definitely going to get worse. The further you're away, we're not seeing the same satellites or the same errors. So that's why it's always closer the better. So we probably won't see anything in the 5 to 15 centimeter range, and we'll see more stuff in the sub-foot range. Yeah, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's something wrong with that Loyola station. I'd have to compare the results, but if I close this out, if I go to my project folder, I'll now see, if I click on types of files, I have 3 corrected files. My original one, and it basically just numbers it _1, _2. It creates a report of what happened in the processing window. but I'll spend more than 5 minutes on this on Monday. But that's kind of the basics of processing the data. So if you have specific questions on that, you can email me or tell me now, and then I can cover it in the session next week.
Okay, yeah, and I put my email in the chat if you want to send me the guide also, but I'm sure Carrie will forward it to everybody.
Perfect. I will do that. Was there any other questions today? All right. Well, I think that's all I have today. We're at about 3 o'clock. I'll convert this recording. It takes a couple hours to convert. I'll probably send it out tomorrow. And then from there, I look forward to working with y'all next week.
Thanks, Eric.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll end the meeting, and then Emma, if you have any questions, since you may not be on next week on the Monday session, I'll be doing processing and exporting. But if there's something specific you want that maybe I need to cover, you can email me and I can go over that in the training.
Okay. Thanks so much.
All right. Y'all have a great day. Bye.